Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Rewilding Intro webinar, where we will be hearing about the restoration of waterfalls in Cornwall in the UK. Just because this is an open webinar and it will be on YouTube as well, we want to give a very short amount of time to explain what the European Rewilding Network is, the ERN. So our network is a community of practitioners from all across Europe, different initiatives that work in rewilding in one way or another and trying to implement rewilding in a variety of ways. So as you can see in this map right here, we have initiatives from all across the continent, and right now we have 94 initiatives that are a part of our network, and our newest members are Taki from France, who works with Prerelease horses, and also from France as well, the vultures come back in the Pyrenees. And one of the latest ones that we got earlier in the year is Saxfield Wilderness from Denmark, who actually presented in these kinds of webinars at the beginning of the year too. So the members of the network receive a variety of benefits, but just to highlight a few, they get access to open webinars like this, where they can present the work that they do to a very general audience of their peers and others. Also learning opportunities through webinars and other kinds of trainings, access to the Rewilding Europe Capital, which is a funding opportunity, opportunity, and then access to European Wildlife Comeback Fund, which is a funding opportunity for money to get animals into a site for reintroductions, which actually David in this case has used. So maybe he will mention it as well. And then of course the networking and learning from each other, which is a huge part of the work that we do. So today we will be hearing from David, who is the director and co-founder of Kernow Conservation, and we're really excited to have him here. And they have a variety of projects that they're working on, and that includes the waterfalls, which they will be highlighting today. And then also we have the hosts, which are me and Kyle. We both work for Rewilding Europe. And today we have a very simple agenda. First, the welcome and introduction, very simple. And then David will be presenting the work that Kernow Conservation is doing on waterfalls in Cornwall. And then we will have a Q&A section. So for this, you can use the Q&A option down below and then write any questions that you have. And then me and Kyle will filter through them and ask them to David at the end of his presentation. So you can feel free to start writing the questions as soon as you have them. So you can do it while the presentation is ongoing, and then we will have the Q&A section at the end. So thank you very much for everyone for being here. And then thank you so much to David for giving us the opportunity to hear more about his work.
Right, just share my screen. You see that okay? Great, okay. Great. Firstly, thank you very much for asking me to give a talk. It's a great pleasure. I'm a huge fan of Rewilding Europe, so and it's great to be part of the European Rewilding Network. So I'm very happy to be here. So I'm just going to give you a talk mainly about our waterfall project. So I'll start with a bit of background, general background about the organisation, who we are, and things like that, and then how we started. And some background about waterfalls as well and why we think they're important. Then I'll talk about how it started for us, where we are now with waterfall reintroductions and conservation in Cornwall, and I'll talk you through the process of the reintroductions and the challenges that we face doing that. And then I'll just end up finally with some of our future plans and ideas going forward. So we're a small team of just 3. There's obviously me on the left. I'm a conservation biologist, and I look after all the field side of things, all the field projects, the waterfall project I head up. And I graduated from the University of Exeter a few years back as a mature student. And I met Zach there, who was also a mature student. He's now moved on, but is still doing some work for us as a wildlife filmmaker. And then we also have Joe, who joined us this time last year. And he's a comms specialist, deals with all our social media, website and things like that. So we're starting to get a sort of small but functioning team together. So it's really good. And just to let you know where we are geographically, we're in this red dotted area in the far southwest of the UK. The place is called Cornwall. We're called Kernow Conservation, and Kernow is the Cornish for Cornwall, so it's the old language for the region. So I think it was nice to use that, and I've just put a sort of a miniaturized version of our logo there as well, which is the outline of Cornwall as well, which we've designed into the logo. So waterfalls in Cornwall. This is where the sort of background to where we are. Just need to be a little bit careful interpreting these maps. They're actually overlapping time periods, so they're kind of, but it gives you a general idea of where we are. You can see in the left, 1861 to 2015. Waterfalls are present in Cornwall, but there's kind of a patchy distribution. There are some very good areas for them, but there's also some not so suitable areas. We have very fast flowing streams and rivers which aren't so good, but they were definitely here. And then on the right, January 2006 to December 2015, which is like the tail end of that period, we have just 1 population. And that's actually a reintroduced population. So sort of somewhere in between that, they became extinct across Cornwall. The reintroduced population was done in 2013. So, and that's still doing well. And the reason for their extinction in the region, we think, was mainly due to American mink, which is obviously a non-native to the UK. Again, you have to be a little bit careful with the maps, overlapping time periods, but on the left, we see lots of mink. It is a longer time period as well, but on the right, you can see they could be starting to reduce in numbers. And we've done lots of monitoring and surveys, and we haven't found any evidence of them in the areas that we've been working in. So it's quite interesting that they may have disappeared, but we don't really understand why. So we do have to be very cautious. And just like the final thing to let you know about, we were actually featured in a film called Rewilding the Riverbank. It was made by some local filmmakers from Falmouth in Cornwall, and it's on EcoFlix as well, if you wanted to have a look there. It's a 20-minute film, it's not very long, but it's about not only about our waterfalls, but generally restoring rivers to do pollution and things like that as well. So we're very pleased to be involved in that. So why are waterfalls important? Well, we think they're a keystone species and an ecosystems engineer. Ecologically, they're a fast-living species, so they have a short lifespan, early reproduction, and this can lead to lots of animals in suitable habitats, so they can be really abundant. They're also prolific, generalist, primary consumers, so they eat lots of plant matter, and they typically weigh 150 to 300 grams, but up to 400 grams for a large adult. This is a lot larger than bank voles and field voles, which are similar types of prey for the animals that eat them. So they're a significant meal and sort of efficient hunting, I think. So I just talked about abundant and suitable habitats. I took this photo. This is actually one of our release sites, which was funded by the European Wildlife Comeback Fund. And I'd say this was pretty ideal habitat for waterfalls. They eat all this lush vegetation around the edge of the water. There's some islands as refugia. They also take cover in the vegetation as well from predators. And there's banks around the edges that they can burrow into, which they use for breeding and cover as well. So that's the ideal kind of habitat that we see for them. Just a little bit more about their importance. I mentioned their diet. They eat literally everything by the side of water. So over 200 plant species have been reported eating, and up to 80% of their own body weight a day, which is a huge amount. And this at a population level can inhibit succession and promote plant diversity. As I mentioned, they're a significant meal, so a good prey base for many birds and mammals. And those burrow systems also have an effect on the environment. They can modify soil conditions, they can dry it out, they can change nitrogen levels. And also when they collapse on the side of rivers, they can actually change the river courses and increase the carrying capacity of the river, which might help with flooding. Probably not to the extent that beavers do, but they may have a significant effect as well. So how we started, as I mentioned, I met with Zach at university. We started Kernow Conservation in 2019. And all we did was we volunteered at a small local nature reserve, and we took other students there to help out with some habitat work. That's where we conceived the idea of water voles. It took us a while. We studied for 3 years, but after that, we found some initial funding from a company called Mossy Earth for the captive bred water voles, which was fantastic, but then realized that we had no equipment and no staffing. So we crowdfunded for this, and that was kind of our break, really. And then once we managed to get started, it gave us some credibility to find more funding and carry on the project, and that's what we're trying to continue with now. So, and this is where we are right now with water voles in Cornwall. There are 7 populations that we know about. Actually, there's 8. I just realized that I heard of one last week, which is on the border, which is an escaped population from the captive breeding program, I believe. But I'll just talk you through this. The one at the top, the blue one at the top, is the Bude Marshes one that I talked about from 2013. After that, the second 2 blue dots are private landowners who've financed and reintroduced the voles themselves sometime in between then and 2022. And then the 2 red ones are Kernow Conservation reintroductions. We've deliberately done them in adjoining valleys, and also strategically, we've done 2 introductions, but 4 releases. So they're kind of like paired releases. And we strategically spread them out so that we're hoping that there is one larger population that sort of interacts over the watershed, which should make it stronger and more resilient. So we're still monitoring. We're not sure if there's actually any exchange of genes between the 2 populations yet, but both of them seem to be doing really well. They've bred and dispersed away from the release sites and are breeding in lots of other places. So they've taken very well to the environment. The reintroduction process and the challenges. So to go through this is a fair amount of work. We have to do some pre-release surveys and monitoring. This is mainly for American mink that I talked about a minute ago. We also just have to do a sort of habitat suitability survey at the release site in particular, which it's fairly straightforward, but it's a box that we have to tick, really, because the habitat is suitable in lots of places. We do a lot of landowner and community engagement. We also, just to get permissions and help with the monitoring. Then we have a captive breeding program that we have to organise and finance. And then at the right time, we have a release day where we actually reintroduce the animals. We've done a mixture of soft and hard releases. I'll explain these and talk about them a bit more. And then we do some post-release monitoring for mink and also the dispersal of water voles and the breeding. And I put fundraising with an exclamation mark. This is really the challenge. I'm sure a lot of people will relate to this. It's our biggest challenge, our biggest headache, just to keep going. We have to spend a lot of time finding money to do the projects. To me, it feels disproportionate, but it's just the way the world is. But there is help out there as well. So I'll talk you through our sort of fundraising strategies. So the pre-release surveys and monitoring, American mink, that is an American mink in the middle. They are, as I say, non-native and coincidentally perfectly suitable for hunting water voles in their burrows. None of our native predators can do this, so that's where they tend to escape from them the most. But the mink get into the burrows and they can wipe out whole colonies in a matter of weeks. A pregnant female will literally just work her way around a lake or a river course and just wipe them out. So they're not good news for us. On the left is what we've been using initially. You can't see it very well. What I'm actually taking out of the raft is a clay footprint trap. The mink are inquisitive, so they'll go through the tunnel and they'll leave their footprints in the trap, and we'll be able to identify them from that. We've spent a lot of time doing this and we haven't found any mink, so it's kind of one of those things. If we knew there weren't mink, we wouldn't have to do it, but we don't know, so we do. And we've also used camera traps, and camera traps are great. What we've learned from this, though, is it's probably more time consuming than using the rafts. You think it would be less, but actually they produce so much data when you use a lot of camera traps. We have so many files to go through that it's just not really cost effective. We do get some very nice non-target species videos as well of things like otters and owls and other things using the watercourse, but it's I think very carefully about camera traps, using too many of them anyway, because there's a huge amount of data and time to go through it. The landowning community engagement, as I said, the release site is really a sort of obviously key to doing this. So again, finding a supportive landowner and getting their permission, that's actually fairly straightforward. Water voles aren't particularly controversial. They don't bring down trees like beavers. They don't predate on things. So most people are very, very supportive. We also try and talk to all the neighbours and all around the local water bodies to try and to get permission to survey for American mink, because obviously mink aren't site specific, they'll be working their way around. We organise volunteer days and get students and other members of the community involved. You can see in the middle picture below that we're basically cutting down willow and gorse from the side of a lake. This was another one of our release sites. In an ideal world, we'll have beavers there, but we don't have them yet, so we have to do it manually. But it's also a great way to get people involved. And also advice. The photo on the right is a site I visited a couple of weeks ago, and they've trimmed and mown right up to the river edge, as you can see, which is not very good for water voles and not particularly good for anything. So I kind of visit local landowners and to offer advice and advocacy, explain what we've been doing and try and get them to sort of just leave at margins at least. So, you know, that's a kind of ongoing thing as well. The captive breeding program, this photo really just kind of gives you the scale of what's going on. It's not even, I don't think it's even half of the facility there. And each of these pens, they have a pair of water voles which are left in there for 3 or 4 weeks to breed. And once the young are born, they're then taken out and they're paired up and put into other pens. And then I think they kind of release about maybe 1,000 water voles a year across the country. There's a big effort to reintroduce and restore water voles, and a big effort to eradicate mink at the moment. So, and the welfare is very high. You can see the tin sheet, which gives them some shelter. There's straw bedding in there, which is changed a few times a week. They've given fresh water and food every day. So it's a very good process. It's not ideal. I think wild to wild translocations would be better, but at the moment the wild populations are too fragile and it's too risky to start moving them about. This is also not a closed system, so water voles from mitigation projects for development come in. So there's new genes coming in as well. So it's not a closed system, which is better than if it were. The release day. This is the most exciting day of the year for us. We spend, normally if we're lucky, we do a couple of these a year. And on the left, these are the transport cases, which the voles come in. They arrive in family groups in these little boxes, and then they are transferred by hand by the very professional people at Derek Gow Consultancy into these soft release cages, which you can see in the middle photo. The next photo across, that is some of our supporters, volunteers, business partners and things like that. So we invite them along for the day. And it's just a really good day for everyone to kind of like celebrate being involved. And then on the right, that's this kind of the same people just helping us carry the cages down and put them by the side of the lake. So it's just a great day to get everybody involved, really. I talked about the soft and hard releases. So the hard releases are where you can see in the sort of top row of photographs where we just release some of the voles directly into the environment. There's we're moving to a situation where we're just going to do the soft releases because I think they're better and probably survivability is better. The reason to do the soft releases is really just for the engagement and the photos, which I think I have mixed feelings about, but we have some photos now. So I think in the future, we're just going to do the soft releases. Top left, you can just see how everybody is just sort of jockeying around to get the good photos as well. I think that's actually Neil from Rewilding Europe in the pond with waders. He got some fantastic photos. And then on the bottom, you can just see one of the soft release pens in the left photo and in the right, actually. We just put them by the edge of the water and they stay in there for 3 or 4 days. We feed them every day. We take some people around and talk about what we're doing, get some more engagement. And then at the end of those 4 days, we put a board on the end nearest the water, which has 2 holes in it. And this means that the voles can get out, but also back in if they want to. And they do that a little bit, but and we leave them for a couple of days. But every time we've done it and we checked after a couple of days, there's no voles left in the cages. So they like that security for a day or so. But then once they discover the big wide world and all the different species of plants that they can eat out there, they're gone. The post-release monitoring, very similar for American mink. Like I say, we were using the rafts and the camera traps. The bottom right, we're actually starting to use smart rafts now. There's a big initiative in the UK to do this, and we actually have a trap in there as well. And what happens is the unit will send a signal to an app that I have on my phone twice a day to tell me whether that trap has been activated or not. And it will send me an instant alert as well if it does get activated. And then I have to go and check that within 24 hours. We've only been using them a few weeks and we haven't had any activated yet. So, but they've been used widely across the country. There's been a big project in the east of the country, in East Anglia, and they've been very successful in removing mink and restoring waterfowl populations. And then the bottom left is the exciting part of the post-release monitoring. We use these little plywood rafts, and you can see on there waterfowl droppings and discarded food. For some reason, they like to sort of perch on these rafts, and then they can just dive straight into the water if a predator comes. So we put these around in the similar places where we've been putting the mink rafts, and we can see, roughly where they've dispersed to. And I think the next slide is. This is just an example of one of the release sites. This is the first release we did. The star is the release site. We very quickly found them breeding upstream about 1 kilometre and downstream about 1 kilometre. And then we've also found them, I think it's about 8 or 9 kilometres down to the one on the right, where we found some droppings, but no confirmation that they're breeding. And we haven't managed to survey a lot of this area, but they will have colonised other places as well. It's just a case of time and resources to get out there and monitor. But we're confident that on that basis, they seem to be in a position where they're establishing themselves for the long term. Fundraising with an exclamation mark again. Okay, Julia mentioned Rewilding Europe, the European Wildlife Comeback Fund. I really recommend this. It's very easy for us to apply, and it's the only purpose-made species reintroduction funding that I know about. So yeah, if you're a member of the network or looking to do some kind of species reintroduction, do have a look at that. I mentioned Mossy Earth before they got us started. We've also applied for grants from Natural England and the postcode lottery previously, and we have developed some corporate partnerships and business memberships, which is ongoing. I think that's a really good sort of more sustainable source of income for us if we can keep developing that. So we're working hard at that. And then I also talked about crowdfunding, which got us started, and this is something we've repeated a few times. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about that. I know there are several platforms, and it comes under like different names of like Kickstarter and things like that. We use a platform called Crowdfunder, who are based in Cornwall, so that makes a lot of sense for us. Just at the bottom, you can see we've actually got a beaver one underway at the moment, but we've done it for all of our projects, and we found them to be very, very popular. They get lots of people interested in donating. People can give whatever donation they like, whether small or large, and that's we've literally had donations of £1 to £1,000 from individuals, and a lot of the time there are match funding donations by organisations. At the moment, there is one by the Aviva Community Fund who are matching donations up to £250. So that's fantastic and a really good incentive for people to donate as well. And I'm actually not using our waterfall one. I'm going to use our Osprey Project one as a example, just because it was the most successful one so far. But you can see just in the bottom, we nearly raised £30,000. There were 264 supporters, both individuals and some businesses. And the platform is ongoing as well. So you can, we did this a year ago, but we can still give updates through the platform to the supporters about the project. There's opt-ins for newsletters, and it builds awareness, loyalty, community, etc. And a lot of people have donated to all of our campaigns and joined our mailing list. So it kind of really helps with things like that. Okay, this is my last slide. So yes, just future plans and ideas. More water vole releases. I think from the slide I showed earlier of the 8 now populations in Cornwall, there's a lot of space to expand that. So we just want to work out how to do that most efficiently. So it'd be interesting to see about our joined up population that we've done and how the other ones spread as well, because obviously there's limited resources and we want to do it in the most efficient way possible. Osprey nesting platforms, we're going to continue to do that next year. And also I mentioned we're just starting a new beaver project. So that's very exciting. Whole different challenge to us as well, because water voles are relatively simple and not so controversial. Beavers are a little bit more controversial with some people, and there are more stringent licensing requirements that we have to learn to navigate. But so we'll see how that goes. Thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you, David. That was great. Thank you so much. We already have some questions.
Okay.
So actually, I thought we should start with this one because you just mentioned the beaver, and early on we got the first question is on beavers. So it's the Harry Patridge is asking, is there significant implications for reintroducing beavers into waterways in the UK for restoration efforts of water voles in Cornwall? So is
sorry.
No, that's it. Sorry.
Okay. Yes, I think the two species go very much hand in hand. There are some signs from other places that once beavers are there, then water voles move into the area because they're just creating the right habitat for them as well. So it's a good argument for both to sort of do both. yes, it does help with beavers. Beavers are, I think we're going to be making some proper progress with beavers in the UK in the next few years, hopefully. I think there seems to be more of a political will. And yeah, waterfalls just adds to the case. I think, beavers are obviously this great biodiversity um, uh, champion kind of thing. I think water voles are as well. They're a little bit underrated because of their size and their prey base and the things they do. But both together is just I think it just increases the health of the river massively as well. So yeah.
Good. Then we have a question related to the minks. So there are two with minks, but I think one kind of encompasses the other. So Sam Facey is asking, do you have any mink trapping in places beside mink monitoring / clay pads? And then they go into detail. So new smart rafts make mink trapping very efficient / low maintenance and are always in trapping mode and would be able to link to Wildlife Recovery Trust who are working towards national mink eradication.
Yes, I did briefly mention that actually, the smart rafts. We are working with the Wildlife Recovery Trust. Our data will feed into theirs. I didn't really have too much to say at the moment because we've only literally put the first rafts out last week. So I and the first thing that happened was I had some problems with some of the remote units. So I kept driving off after I put the raft out and it kept sending me alert to say that it had been triggered. So I kept driving back and it hadn't been triggered. But yes, we're working with them. And yeah, the Wildlife Recovery Trust have done a fantastic job. And we're just going to copy their methodology basically in Cornwall and try and move from we're starting in two areas. One just out of convenience, which is Gosmore. I don't know if people know the area in Cornwall, which is managed by Natural England. So that they wanted to use that as a test area, but also more strategically, we're putting out these smart rafts, smart traps on the Lizard Peninsula. So as it's a peninsula, we should be able to say within the next 6 months whether there are mink there. Because of the density of the rafts that we're putting out, we should be able to detect them. And if they are there, we should be catching them as well in the rafts, in the traps. So, and I think from the data that the Wildlife Recovery Trust have spoken about, if you put the rafts out at a density of around 1 every 20 kilometers squared, which is not very much, you will remove 70% of the mink every year. And that means within 5 years, basically, you have a non-functioning population. There's just not enough animals to find each other and breed. So that is very much the plan. But it also relies on funding as well. I believe, I can't remember the figure, but in terms of buying the rafts and running them for 5 years, in terms of having a project officer to manage volunteers and maintain the traps, it's several £1,000s per raft. And I think my calculation was something like £800,000 to run the project across Cornwall. It's just like, so we're starting small and trying to.
Yeah, makes sense. Actually, well, you mentioned volunteers, and Sam also asked, did volunteers get involved with the post-release monitoring of water voles? Were there any challenges?
Yeah, I mean, we do volunteers. We kind of get we're very close to the university, and I have ties to the university, so we get volunteers from there. But the volunteers tend to sort of go home during the holidays and things like that as well. So it kind of leaves gaps. I don't know if that's kind of what you mean by challenges, but that's one of the challenges for us, is to kind of have consistent volunteering. But volunteers are volunteers, and they're not paid, and they have time, have other things, other priorities. So yeah, but yeah, I think that answers that hopefully.
Yeah. So also someone is asking, how long do you plan to introduce more voles into the breeding project into new places on the waterways?
Until I don't know. I'm not sure. It depends how long how well the existing populations established, and that's one of the challenges as well. I talked about the Bude Marshes reintroduction, which was the first one in 2013. There's no structured monitoring of that going on. No one knows how big that population is. I think they introduced maybe 350 voles, and they have been recorded now in places quite a long way away, but no one can really say. There's no funding for any monitoring, and that monitoring would inform us on where would be another good place, sort of near enough to there, but also far enough away to make it efficient. And that's one of the big challenges as well is in funding, is getting funding for things like that. It's kind of not the most popular or sort of the most marketable side of reintroductions, I think, but it's also really important. So the answer is I don't know, and as long as we need to, really, or as long as we can continue to get funding, there will come a point where I think there'll be enough populations in Cornwall that it will be considered that they'll start to join up naturally, at which point we should we should just leave them alone and not waste money doing it when we don't need to. Do other things, beavers maybe.
There's plenty of work to be done. No need to
There's
make
a
more
lot.
work for ourselves, I think. Yeah, well, actually, there's this interesting question from Harry. So says the map at the start of the presentation seems to show a low density of water voles in Cornwall compared to the Midlands and other parts of the UK. Does this suggest generally more mink in Cornwall, or are other factors involved?
A very good question. I think there are other factors involved, but I think it was also considered that that Cornwall was a stronghold for mink when they escaped. I think mink were very, very numerous, but I think there are other factors. I think we have some very fast flowing streams and rivers. We have some very they've been sort of canalized on a small level. So like literally just down the road from my house, people have built a wall either side of the stream, which is like 8 foot high or something, just to drain the land. And there's no habitat there for water voles. So they can't burrow into the banks. There's no food for them because it's just a stone wall. And there's lots of areas like that in Cornwall. And the other thing that I think is a big factor as well, and I think this happened a long time ago, it was the loss of beavers as well, because beavers slow the water, as we talked about a minute ago. They create the habitat. So I think the decline has been happening for hundreds of years. And then mink came in and finished them off. So hopefully we can get on top of mink. Then we just have to, set about the habitat and beavers and things like that. And, like you say, Julia, there's a lot of work to do.
So one of the last questions, and we're going to close it up. What have you found to be the ideal conditions for release? For example, waterway length, water movement, adjacent habitat, human infrastructure or developments, etc.
I'd say lakes and ponds, very slow moving water, and the lush vegetation around the edge of it as well, and supportive landowners as well who really want to, who kind of listen as well, because not all landowners kind of listen properly. You say something, they nod, and then you come back and they've done something else. So it kind of, I think it's the slow. They don't particularly like fast flowing water, so it's the slower the better. And that comes, it takes us basically to sort of ponds and lakes. And a lot of the places we've actually reintroduced them were newly created lakes and ponds that weren't there before they went extinct. So in a kind of way, I feel like we're cheating a little bit, but it is the ideal conditions for them. And in all our release sites, they have stayed there and continued to breed and then dispersed. You don't want to release them next to somewhere where they're not going to breed, and the first thing they have to do is move, because dispersal is costly basically, and a proportion of those will die on the move. So you want to put them in the right place to begin with.
Makes sense. Actually, there seems to be someone that's interested in volunteering. And
Okay.
so they're asking, would it be possible, for instance, to contribute for weeks at a time, or are the opportunities infrequent? Like, how often do you have opportunities for volunteering?
We're doing some volunteering at the moment for Habitat. If they probably the best thing is if you want to drop us a message through our website.
Yeah, I linked the website, so please go and email
Yeah,
Kernow
drop us a
Conservation.
message. There are things, I mean, if there's specific things that people want to do to get experience in or something like that, we might be able to accommodate. We're very much interested in having more volunteers.
So please contact David directly. So I have one last question. This one's from myself. So I kept it. So actually, one of the things that I've noticed about your initiative in particular is that you pay a lot of attention and you're very good at the communication side of things. Like, you try to have really high quality visuals and you're very active on social media. So how do you feel like that part of the work that you do has benefited your work as an organization?
It's an interesting question as well, because it's a little bit intangible. We can't really measure it. But I do believe there's undoubtedly a huge benefit to it as well. We are, I think, I kind of feel like we're very well known. We're starting to get very well known in our own area, but also within the community of kind of like rewilding and things like that. So, and I think it helps and it brings credibility just by doing that, when it's not really, it's a kind of funny one, because it's a credibility of, we have to communicate and we have to tell the story of what we're doing. So, and I think if we're doing that, it does bring that credibility as well. And I think it certainly helped us with funding. But like I say, it's really difficult to say exactly how or exactly how much or exactly thing. But so it's something we battle with all the time, is trying to get that balance of activity right. So that because we have to write fundraising applications as well. We have, like I say, we have corporate and business members. And again, like the social media feeds into that as well. Because if we're approaching someone to say, do you want to sponsor us? Probably one of the first things they do are look at our website and look at our social media. And if you've got a big following on social media, then, that kind of instantly brings a bit of credibility for whatever reason. So, we've worked very hard on our LinkedIn presence, for example, because that's a kind of business base as well. But we try to kind of be everywhere, I think. So yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I'm not 100% sure of the answer.
No, but I think that it's one of those things that it's difficult to measure, but it's clear that it has a lot of benefits and it takes a lot of time. So it's I think it's something that a lot of the members of the European Rewilding Network are battling with, how much time to invest, and because it's so difficult to know how many benefits you're getting. But I can totally see that the work that you do is getting traction through there. So congratulations on all of the work that you do, just in general.
Great.
And thank you so much for sharing with us all of the work that you do, and all of your knowledge. And thank you everyone for attending. And yeah, we'll see you at the next one.
Thanks, Julia. Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.